And good morning to some of our Think
Oh,
Differently
yeah.
people.
I was
Yes.
like, good morning.
And good afternoon to people who are watching this later. Who knows? Whenever you're watching this. Hello.
And good day. Uh-oh.
Yes.
So, good day to you guys who are watching us from wherever or whenever.
Mhm.
We are wrapping up tonight our series on abuse. And though we've done a number of series on abuse, we try to take more kind of the cultural approach this time to talk about what are all the other factors surrounding abuse. So we talked about gaslighting, and we talked about grooming.
Mhm.
We talked about some of the issues that involve the third party persons and those kind of things.
And how that looks in within the cultural aspect of it. So
Then last week we talked about personality disorders,
woo.
which I think the only other time I've really taught on personality disorders was in one of our live events.
Yeah.
And so not even a live event, but one of our video / Zoom events.
Mhm.
And so that will be a new piece for many of you guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Rose, how are you? Beth?
Good morning, Beth.
Good morning.
Glad y'all are here joining us. Yeah,
So-
let us know where you're watching from. And
if you're new to us, click the like below.
good job. Yeah.
Wherever it is down there, somewhere at the bottom if
And
you're
then
on
the
YouTube.
subscribe is on YouTube
Subscribe
over
over here.
Yep.
And click those so that you can get notified every time we're on.
Mm-hmm.
As we end the series, we're also going to go into a little bit of a break for the summer. So
Turning that off.
when did you say
It's
we're
flashing.
going
Not
to
sure.
start back? We'll come back. We'll communicate somewhere about a month down the road when we're starting back up and what we're going to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely be communicating in July.
But we are tonight also not only wrapping up the series, but we're wrapping up our training and certification. So we've been at that for 15 weeks.
Yeah.
Some of you guys were a part of that, and you've discovered the joy and beauty of training and certification with Bob and Polly.
Wow.
I'm sure that's how you experienced
we need some music in the background. Yes.
Dun, dun.
So, but yeah. So, hello, Betty. Good to see you too. And then Tina from hot and sunny Florida.
Beautiful.
Glad you're here. Yeah, just talking about training certification. We're actually going to do another training in the fall. We're going to break it up this time. So we're going to do training in October, I think starting in October. I can't remember the dates, but then so we'll do training in October.
I think the month of October and first 2 weeks of November.
It's a 6-week. And then we're actually going to then do certification. So you'll get a longer winter break, I guess summer for Beth, but a break in between. And then we'll start back up in, I think, February of 2023. That's crazy to even say.
Right.
And then you have a speaker course coming up that you're offering.
Super excited about that. We're waiting to get that online. Should be any day now. And
yes.
When it's online, I will be posting it everywhere. It's one of the things I've been talking about for a while. Actually, since I finished Think Differently, Learn Differently, which is a book for communicators. And the idea behind that book was not all learning is created equal.
Yes.
And some learning is designed to make you know information better. Some learning is designed to change you. And so if we focus on the kind of learning that helps us change, then we'll all be better off for it.
Yes, very much so.
So anyway, that was the goal of that book. And so I wanted to write it for communicators, speakers and teachers and preachers and what I call it that one time, teacher speaker course. And so we taught it live a couple times straight out of the book, but we've learned so much more.
Yeah.
And a lot of those live things, when we record them, they come across with a lot of conversation, the Q&A times, which can be some valuable teaching, but then it ends up kind of in some dialogue. And so I shot all new video, including some new content, new take on some of the old content, took out, of course, all the conversational portions of it, about 9.5, a little bit over 9.5 hours of video content. And then we'll add to that the Tuesday night coaching component, where if you're a speaker and want to learn how to apply that stuff to your specific message, we'll meet together for 6 Tuesdays in a row and help you do that. So pretty excited about that. So in the meantime.
Hi, Ian. Glad you're here. Hey, David from Cali. And then Patricia from New Jersey. Glad you're here. Awesome. So just so y'all know, when we get started, we will not be interacting with the comments until at the end, because we have learned, I'm sure some of y'all have heard us say this, but we have learned that when we try to transcribe it, it comes with, it's a very interesting conversation. Like we're teaching and I was like, oh, hey. So, but
it makes us sound kind of ADHD.
Yeah.
Even if we are.
Even if we are.
So,
yes. So
hey,
hi, Alicia and then
Pat.
Glad y'all are here. Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started because tonight is the last class in the series. And then we'll be taking a break for the summer. The first part of the summer, I guess.
Yeah.
And but tonight we're going to talk about recovering from abuse, from all the stuff that we have been talking about throughout this whole series. It's like, okay, so we have all of this information. Maybe some of us have had these experiences, but now what?
Yeah.
How do we heal? How do we recover from all of this?
And one of the things that is somewhat presumed in that process is that you're safe and you're no longer in an abusive circumstance.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to really heal while you're still in the midst of an abusive circumstance, because abuse keeps you kind of in that lower part of your brain. You're constantly on the defense. I describe it sometimes as still being in the war zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really go through a healing process while you're still, there's bullets flying around. I guess I shouldn't say that because in some cases, literally, that's the case. But so the idea is for people who have left an abusive relationship, and I want to say, a lot of our emphasis is on abusive marriages, but I work with people who've been in abusive work settings and abusive friendships, and the healing process, there's still a lot of common ground in that. So we're talking really for people who are almost out or have gotten out of an abusive relationship of some sort.
Or have been left from an abuser and just kind of like just all of the dynamics of all of that.
Yeah. And because we've spent so much time talking about culture, I want to kind of start in particular by talking about the importance of finding safety and finding safe community. I saw someone posted recently online, it might have even been one of you, that said, a lot of the pain that we suffered in abuse isn't just the abuse that we endured, but it's the pain that happened when we told people who should have helped, and instead they supported our abuser, or they didn't provide the help that we needed. And so really, even the research supports the fact that the healing from abuse it's so much more important that it take place in the context of safe and supportive relationships. I think it's one of the reasons why the survivor community developed such a strong bond with each other, because of a couple things. Number one, is important that we have community in which to go through that process. Number two, it's really hard to explain to people who haven't been through psychological and emotional abuse what's really happening. In fact, a lot of people I talk to say, when I look at that, I think, well, was it really that bad?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's not the specific behaviors that cause the pain, but it's the constant emotional weight. It's the constant blame and shame. It's that hope.
The eroding.
Yeah.
It's like, you see the houses that are falling off of, cliffs and stuff like that. It's the eroding, the continual hitting of the waves and the storms that just finally wear you down to collapse.
So, and I've said to people that sometimes the any single event that took place in abuse is not necessarily abusive in itself. It's the all day long, every day, 365 days a year that there's that constant, and that's where the erosion that Polly's talking about, it's just a nonstop. It's like 1,000 paper cuts a day, and no single paper cut's enough to end a relationship. But by the time you've had 1,000 a day for 10 years, you have more cuts than you have uncut skin.
Right.
And so it's that erosion of the soul. It's that erosion of the sense of safety. It's the erosion of the sense of stability and self. And so because of that, then finding safe community, finding people that you can feel, that they understand. So when you sit down with other people, or even find on social media groups of people who've been through emotional and psychological abuse. And let me say, though we've said it a number of times, all abuse is emotional and psychological. If the abuse has been physical or sexual, if it's been narcissistic abuse, which is just another form of psychological abuse, it has that kind of underpinning tenet of psychological and emotional abuse, in which physical abuse happens or in which sexual abuse happens. There's always the psychological and emotional component to it. And so finding people who understand, and you don't have to explain things, and they don't question and go, but was it really that bad? And just that
Did
knowing.
you try everything? Did you try everything? Did you pray hard enough? Did you have enough faith?
Yeah. and have you forgiven, which might be an important other thing that we talk about in the healing process.
Say that one.
When other people say, have you forgiven?
Oh, have you forgiven? Yes. And then, not all survivor communities are safe too.
That's
we will talk a little bit about that as well.
Okay. So one of the things about forgiveness, and this question comes up a lot because forgiveness is often used as a part of the abusive cycle. The abuser or the flying monkeys or even an untrained helper will sometimes say, you need to forgive, or have you forgiven, like Polly said, as a way of saying you're part of breaking the cycle of abuse, which shows they don't understand the cycle of abuse, is that you have to forgive. And if you continue to talk about it, then you must still be bitter.
Right.
When in reality, people often continue to talk about it because they simply haven't yet been validated. Nobody has said, wow, that really happened. Oh my gosh, that must have been incredibly painful. And in the lack of validation, in many cases, in the lack of belief, people continue to talk about it, hoping to be heard. And then onlookers go, wow, they're angry or bitter because they keep talking about it.
And the forgiving. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. Forgiveness is one of those things that there's so many different thoughts and ideas about it. We want to talk about where we stand and why we stand there. And that is that forgiveness is an important part of your healing process, but not the way that a third party or an untrained counselor might say. The way that we think of forgiving is that we forgive for our own healing and freedom.
Right.
So if somebody has wounded me or injured me in some way, my forgiveness is not for their sake. My forgiveness is to get back the real estate inside my head where they've resided and to break any connection to them that may have kept me way down. So I forgive them as a way of saying, I want to stop carrying the weight of their offense and give that weight to one who's designed to carry that is the Lord. And so when we hand that weight over to the Lord to carry that, it's the beginning of our healing process. It's not, someone actually asked me this on social media today, is it necessary to tell the other person that you've forgiven? Absolutely not necessary at all. In fact, sometimes the person you're forgiving is deceased. And again, the point of forgiveness is to release your connection to them and to give you back the real estate inside your brain. Whatever happens to them is between them and the Lord, between them and the people that they stay connected to. But your forgiving them doesn't even have to be announced. And other people will question that. You don't need to defend yourself. If you've let go to the point where you can, tonight we'll also talk about letting go of some things. Super important part of the process.
Yes.
So I think sometimes there are certain things that abusers use as bait. And it's kind of like the monkey that reaches in and grabs a banana and can't pull it out because he's hanging on to it. It's a terrible metaphor. I'm sorry. But letting go of things is an important part of the healing process also. But one of them is letting go of your anger towards them, or at least letting go of the kind of anger that harms you.
Yeah.
Sometimes the anger you hang on to is the anger that says there's still boundaries being violated, and the boundaries that are still being violated don't require forgiveness. What they call for is boundaries and ongoing consequences. So let's go ahead and talk about the safe communities. Well, it's still on our mind.
Yes. Yeah.
So really wisely pointed out by one of our viewers that not all survivor communities are safe. And one of the things that you'll see this in almost any group setting is that sometimes people will then take on the characteristics of the very thing that they're either opposing or the thing that they walked away from because they're still carrying unhealed pain. And so sometimes, and we've seen a couple examples of where survivor communities become unsafe because one survivor may think the other person's doing it wrong, or they may make accusations against another survivor. And it's important to just keep a finger on the pulse of your safety depends on your learning to recognize kind of one of the things that happens in abuse, and we've often referred to it as that frog in boiling water.
Yeah.
And so what happens is our recognition of unsafe people is reduced. Our ability to discern and recognize that is reduced by the constancy of the amount of abuse that we endure ourselves. And so when that happens, we really have to, one of the things we need to do is get back our own discernment to say, if it feels unsafe, my brain acts as if it's unsafe, therefore it is unsafe. Now, again, sometimes it helps to have a professional that you trust, because not all professionals are safe.
Right.
To have a professional that you trust help you discern, this is what happened in the circumstance. Is that a safe person or is that an unsafe person? So it can help to have at least one or two people that you trust to say this is happening in that community. But when you see people, the very same things go along with abuse. When you see people trying to control other people and tell them how they should react, what they should be doing, what they should not be doing. As soon as people start making rules and dogma, you're trending back towards the kind of things that made the culture unsafe in the first place.
Right.
What else would you say about safe?
I would say, just this, but what's the fruit of the community? If it's constant, like belittling and badgering, even the things you're trying to heal from, there's importance of like, like we have the same experience and validating and all that. But if it's a continual like shaming other people, whether they're like the abuser, and but is there growth? Is there like, how do we heal from this? How do we empower each other with our stories and communicate and connect and build this community around a common experience? But just because we have a common experience, we don't want the common experience to be our driver
or our identity
or our identity. We want it to be, this is what we've come from, and we can all say me too. And then it's like, from that, it's like, so how are you healing from this? Instead of, spending all this time like shredding all the things that we've escaped. And so it is that paying attention to, what is the common theme within the community that is safe, and just paying attention to that.
Yeah, the question that comes to my mind while you're saying that is, are people moving forward or are people looking backwards? And it's incredibly important to receive validation and the support of we all had a common experience. But if the eyes are constantly backwards and never forwards or seldom forwards, then there's not going to be much forward movement. I in some of my writing and in one of our conferences, I used a parable that talks about a woman who was pushed in a hole and injured herself at the bottom of the hole and had to figure out how to climb back up out of the hole. And the whole time worried that the man may be still waiting at the top to, either push her back in or whatever the case might be. Well, the rest of the story goes that she spent a lot of time learning how to, be safe on the trail and how to watch for dangerous people. And, she spent a lot of time studying dangerous people, but forgot how much she loved hiking. And so I think one of the things I've seen happen both with individuals and groups, well, abuse recovery is very specific. I think it's harmful to separate it from your overall freedom and maturity and growth journey. In other words, when I become just a survivor of abuse instead of a part of a larger community, and my abuse recovery is a very specific thing, and it's not a part of a larger process of healing and restoration. One of the things that I often say is that whatever we seek first organizes our life.
Yes.
And so when we seek first recovery from abuse, then abuse continues to organize our life.
Right.
But if we seek first wholeness, if we seek first the kingdom, then the presence of God, the person of God, becomes the organizing factor. And rather than we're trying to heal and bringing God into it, we're trying to get connected to God and bringing our healing into it.
Yeah.
And it's a very different focus. But what you focus on really does organize your life and therefore has power. I also think that, and this is tricky, I'm just going to say in my own journey, there came a point where I was like, I've got to do some healing at a deeper level. And so I picked up a book that's at the time, it was a pretty well-known book in the healing journey. And I started reading it about 3 or 4 chapters in. I was not doing better. I was doing worse.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and part of the advice, and the thing is, the advice is not wrong, but 4 chapters in, the advice was consistently, don't run away from the pain, sit in the pain, be present in it. And there's a point where that's not wrong.
Right.
But I kept waiting for it to say, and then, or be present in the pain while you, but it was really about staying connected and staying in the pain. And like immediately, like I put it down because I think it wasn't helping me. It seemed to be making me feel heavier and not better. And so shortly after that, I picked up a book that I sometimes recommend to our trainees called The Rise of Superman, which isn't about abuse recovery at all. It's about optimal human function. It's about a brain state called flow. And I mean, days later, I'm like
on fire.
Yeah. All of a sudden,
good fire.
The heaviness was lightening. I was finding passion come back. I was finding clarity of mind, and all the things I wasn't finding in sitting in the pain and letting it be there, I was finding in my moving towards the direction of what's true about what's possible for me.
Right.
What's not just what's happened and what do I feel, but what's possible to feel, what's possible to do, how is it possible to live. And so
it was identity based.
Yeah.
Like what is inside of you is reaching the very top part of your brain, and then that was feeding your whole body.
So there's a balance to be found there, but again, it goes back to the focus. If we focus on the abuse and we focus on the pain, that does give those things power over our mind and our soul. So then I want to talk about letting go of some stuff.
Yeah.
We ready to?
Yeah. I was just thinking, what is, oh my gosh, her name just flew out of my head. Anne. What does she say about the pain? Because that was really important and impactful.
Yeah. Our good friend, Anne Ressler, who I hope she watches this because we quote her all the time.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But she said, everybody knows that we are supposed to get beauty for ashes, but not everybody's willing to sit in the ashes long enough for the beauty to show up. And it's important to stay connected to reality, but the focus is, different. Staying connected is different than what do we focus on. So it is important to stay connected, to stay in the ashes. The beauty will show up, but also we don't have to just smear the ashes all over us.
You don't have to stay stuck there.
Right.
It's part of the process. Yeah.
So the thing that was on my mind thinking about this class tonight is I thought about how many things you have to let go of. And honestly, I'm going to say, like I said a couple minutes ago, there are certain things that most abusers will use for bait. And all of those things that the abuser uses for bait become things that if we struggle to let go of them, then there's still whole parts of our soul and mind and heart that are still moving backwards or still attached to the abuser. And again, we're not quite safe yet when we're still attached in those ways. And one of the things that I think we have to let go of is, how do I say this? Hope in their change.
Right.
We don't ever let go of hope, but hope is one of those things that the strength of hope depends on what it's attached to. And when we hope in things that are designed to create hope, it's got power. But when we hope in perhaps he or she will change, or maybe my leaving will be the thing that finally makes a difference. As long as our mind is still trying to create hope out of expecting the abuser to change, then we're still hanging on to that thing that keeps us trapped.
You're still the responsibility. You're still taking on responsibility for something that you're ultimately not responsible for.
And hope is one of those things that most abusers will use to keep their victims engaged. They'll drop a promise here or there. They'll give a couple days of change, or they'll go to counseling twice, or
even the counselors and or lay people will administer hope in a way that can be false hope for you to stay in that, as if we're looking at the culture aspect of it.
And this isn't always the case, but occasionally I've seen where the counselor's ego might be involved in that, where they're like, well, I can change him, or I can change her. I'm different, and I can make a difference here. Wow. Now, if you've already been through that cycle a few times and you find one more counselor's like, no, I've got the answer, let them have it, but you can let go and walk away. And so recognize that hope that's based on your abuser changing is part of the bait that they've used to keep you in the cycle all along, as are several of these other things that we'll talk about. And one of them is, I think there's a hope that eventually the abuser will wake up and feel bad for what they've done. Now, they might feel bad, but it's generally they feel bad if they've lost control of a cycle that they controlled.
Right.
And so their attempts to pull people back in or to hoover people back in aren't because they feel guilt or shame about what they've been doing. It's because they recognize, oh no, I'm losing control over my mark. and I have to put on this particular face to pull them back in. And so there's kind of a hope that they will change, or there's a, they hold that over you that, something's finally happened. Well, because that's one of the things they use to keep us hooked in, then we have to be able to say, if we're going to heal, we have to let go of those things that keep us trapped in the mental cycle. Here's another one that I think is important to let go of, and that is we need to let go of our expectation that justice will finally happen. I know. That's so hard for me.
So hard.
Like, even saying it, I'm like, wait, should I take that back? But justice in terms of someday, I'll be vindicated and they'll be seen for who they are. The expectation of that often keeps us mentally still hooked into the cycle. Even if we're physically and other ways out of it, then mentally and emotionally we're stuck in it. As long as we're still hoping for vindication, we're going to try to, that way when someone says something, we are going to answer it back to try to justify ourselves, or we're going to defend ourselves in some way. And as long as we continue to have the need to defend ourselves or vindicate ourselves in order that justice will happen, we're going to continue to be on that spiral that says, the abuse still defines the dynamic. But when we can start saying, I'm done defending me, if justice doesn't happen until the ultimate justice of the return of Christ, then I'm not going to spend my time trying to engineer or even looking for the expectation that, justice is finally going to happen.
Which is so devastating, especially if you're navigating the court systems with kids, a divorce, all of that, like in the justice system, even like how much it fails people. And so, it's so hard to navigate. Somebody's saying it's in the comments, it's the hardest because it has so many elements. And then there's just that personal, please let there be justice. Please let this person be caught, whatever that means. But
let people finally
let people see, let the scales come off their eyes so they can actually see. But remember, what I say often is abusers don't abuse every person they come in contact with. So the people's experiences of that person are a lot of times incredibly different than what you have experienced. And that is part of the manipulation and control.
Yeah. And along with that hope for justice, I think the other thing we have to let go of is the idea that others will finally see. It's another version of justice, and that is, there is that cultural aspect that we've been talking about these last several weeks, where other people get involved, and in so many cases, they support the abuser, they re-abuse the victim, or at least they pull support from the victim. And when that happens, there's this kind of hope and expectation that, but someday their eyes will be opened. It's just another version of justice. And as long as we're hanging on to all those things that we wish were different, see, there's something really important about accepting the reality that we now have. Not to be poor me, and not to go, it sucks to be an abuse victim, but to say, listen, if this is the new reality, then let's level the ground and start building on what we have, instead of trying to build on something we hope we have or wish we had or hope someday to have. The sooner we can go, okay, this is the new normal. And the new normal, if you're still connected because you're raising kids together, if you're still connected because of, legal processes going on, but to the degree that you can get, let go of those things that tend to keep us hooked in, letting go of those things, I think, is a crucial part of getting back that real estate inside your brain. And I want to say, and maybe this is the place to kind of land us, I think when I talk to people about the recovery process, one of the things I often begin in conversation is, who were you before it happened? What was true about your mind? What was true about your heart? What was true about your life and your perspective on life, your relationships? Who were you before it happened? And occasionally I have some people say, I started being abused very young. Polly's abuse started very young. And so people will say, there wasn't a me before it happened. It happened at such an early age. And so I still think there's an echo inside all of us of who we're created to be.
Yes.
And that echo feels like life because it is. It's the part of us that's connected to our created design.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether you experienced abuse later in life and you can go back and look at who you were in your teens or your 20s, whatever period of time you can go, I remember the me I was before the abuse happened. Or you have to go back and say, I have this kind of innate sense that there's more to my life than what I've lived, that there's more of me than the world's been able to see so far.
Yeah.
Here's the thing we always say, and this is why I think this might be a good place for us to land. Abuse didn't happen to you because there's something wrong with you. Abuse happened to you because something is very right, very beautiful, and very powerful about you. Abusers seek out people who are kind and generous and forgiving and thoughtful and serving and all the kind of qualities that make you the amazing person you are, and the kind of qualities that would make you an amazing partner in a healthy relationship are the very things that an abuser looks for to say that's the kind of person. Remember, what they're after is, we'll use the narcissism idea. They're after supply.
Yeah.
The emptiness they feel inside, they're looking for somebody who can help fill that emptiness and leave them not feeling empty. Now, they'll never admit to that because they'll tell you that they're superior to you. They'll present themselves as superior. But inwardly, they understand you've got some things that they simply have either never had or don't ever remember having, and that is emotional stability, emotional resource. Like I said, kindness. You can almost go love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, meekness, mercy, and self-control. All of those things that are actually fruits of the Spirit, without the boundaries that come from wisdom and experience, can also make us a potential mark for an abuser. Why do I say that in the recovery process? Because somewhere inside you, that version of you is still living. And the recovery process isn't about fixing a broken thing. It's about rediscovering the you that you've been all along.
Yeah.
We're not broken by abuse. We're buried in it. And yet you never lose that. Now, depending on how long you've lived in it and what kind of abuse you've lived through, it can feel like you've lost it. But listen, I'm fairly sure I'll go to my grave with this. And that is, I believe that we all still carry the seed of who we're created to be.
Yeah.
And that seed doesn't die because of circumstances. It doesn't die because of events and circumstances in our life. It stays there like a spark, waiting to connect to the source of life and waiting to connect to other living organisms that will give life to it. And so part of the recovery process is remembering abuse isn't who you are. You're not sick and getting healed. There's not something broken about you that you're trying to get all the pieces put together. You've been wrapped up tightly in a web of lies and a web of wounds, but the real you is inside somewhere, and the real you is incredible. The real you is somebody who can and will change the world, and can and probably still does give life to others.
Absolutely.
If you are all those things we described, and you are, because you're listening to this as someone who's going, why did it happen to me?
Right.
All those things we described in terms of your generosity and your compassion and your love and your, those things that make you such a good partner in a healthy relationship also mean that you give life to the world around you.
Right.
As you give life to the world around you, know that when you and you participate in a healing community, know that it's okay for you to receive love. So it's important to read the books. It's important to watch the videos. It's important to do the things, but it's also important to go back and find the you that you were before and embrace that person. So,
and that somebody said in the comments that they shared this, that is the sweetest justice.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That was really good. I think it was Catherine who said that.
Yeah, 100%. You really want to bring justice. I've often said in my forgiveness teaching that justice is when wrong things are made right. And when you have been wronged, and you can be yourself in the face of that kind of darkness and that kind of pain, you can rise above that and come back to the person you were created to be, not to prove anything.
That's right.
But because that's where your peace and strength lives.
Yes.
And the person who was trying to make you less than yourself is going to look and go, crap, I couldn't do it. You win.
Yeah.
So, guys, it's been great to have you with us.
Yes. Great.
We're going to take some time to rest and kick back a bit.
Yeah. And so we will be out for a few weeks, and we will be back sometime in July to let y'all know what this whole thing looks like for the rest of the year.
And don't forget speaker teacher training, which we call it Speaking Differently.
Speaking Differently will be up soon. Bob will be posting it. It'll
be everywhere.
You'll
so
see
keep an
it.
eye
You'll
on
see
all
it.
the socials. It'll pop up. But would love to have you guys there. One of the things we found out with the book is that people actually start to learn differently, which is actually the title of the book.
Yes.
But this is a speaker training for people who communicate with the purpose of helping people change. So hopefully see you guys there.
Yes. And y'all have a great beginning of the summer. Some of y'all, this is the beginning of your winter. Sorry, Beth. And we love you guys and have a great one. We'll see y'all in July.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.